Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Jasmine Mara, who is Vice President of Bromwich and Smith here in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Jasmine.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you folks put out, you're a licensed insolvency trustee. Today you put out a COVID economy poll, and there were some interesting points in that I wanted to explore with you. The first one was that 17% of Albertans feel that they are likely to explore insolvency in the near future. Is that a surprising number?
You know, it is. 17% of Albertans looking to explore insolvency. Just to provide context, because I think that's potentially what it's missing, is last year in 2019, the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, which is kind of the governing board for bankruptcy in Canada, suggested the stat was about 0.5% of Canadians would file for insolvency. So this is quite a surprising stat in terms of the increase in people considering insolvency.
Yeah, and the other point to that, the number was 1 in 10 are likely to seek advice about bankruptcy or consumer proposals. What is putting people in those situations where they're looking at this?
I think that's a great question, Mario. Obviously, everybody right now is experiencing this pandemic. We're all experiencing it a little bit differently. But I think for those that are really struggling financially, whether you've lost your job or you have a small business that's not thriving, reaching out for that help is really a key for getting over this hump. But why is that happening? I think it's a combination of factors. One of the things I can say that is probably a positive is we do see those government supports have provided a really great cushion. So even though we see that there's lots of Albertans potentially looking at insolvency in the future, current stats suggest actually that we're down in the number of insolvencies that we filed year over year. So some of that relief has certainly helped, at least for the short term.
Yeah, okay then. The other thing that I found interesting was that 9 in 10 felt the pandemic has set back the socioeconomic progress that in general that has been made. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right, yes. So when we break down those socioeconomic groups a little bit further, we see that low-income individuals sort of top the list. So they're really feeling the pressure of this pandemic. That's followed by seniors at 57%, people on disabilities at 47%, women, new Canadians, and visible minorities. So there are, in addition to sort of those low income, low wage hourly workers, some socioeconomic groups that have been really affected in terms of their progress.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the way things are these days, one of the things that, it comes up, and I know it came up in your study, was looking at quote unquote lazy, irresponsible, and selfish people, because, you did mention that, the government supports, there's a lot of breaks out there for people. Are you surprised at, I guess, the level of, I don't know if it's intolerance, if that's the right word to use, but you know what I mean, that how many people think that others are lazy, irresponsible, and selfish, even though they're going through this tough times.
I was surprised, but at the same time, working in insolvency, I have to say it wasn't too shocking for me. I've already kind of normalized to that. Finances and struggling with debt still carries a big shame and stigma in society. And so I think one of the good things that has come out of this is that we're starting to see a little bit of that empathy and understanding coming back. People are realizing, you know what, if you're filing for a restructuring or a bankruptcy or insolvency, maybe it's not just because you were lazy or because you're not able to pay your debts or you didn't want to pay your creditors back. it's because of an external trigger. And we at the insolvency firm knew this, of course, before the pandemic, as we see clients all the time that come in that are likely affected by a job loss or critical illness or a death of a spouse. But there is still that stigma and shame there, which definitely came out in the survey. So, as a society, I hope someday we can feel comfortable to talk about our debts. And today, I still think we're not there.
Okay. One last question for you, Jasmine. When you look at the situation that many people are in right now, what advice do you have for people that are facing these economic and financial challenges, whether it's personal or professional?
I think the first thing, and maybe this seems a little bit intuitive, but really getting a handle on your finances. I think specifically for Albertans and Calgarians, one of my favorite things about living here for the past 13 years that I have is that we have just this amazing optimism and we always think it's going to get better. But I think now's the time for a reality check. Really checking in with your finances, really accepting what that new normal might look like for you, and potentially trying to make some changes so that we can live within our means, and make sure that it's sustainable as we go forward. The second thing I would say is, if you are struggling at all with debt, reach out for help. Bromwich & Smith offers free, confidential, no obligation consultations, and make sure you're chatting with a licensed insolvency trustee. These are the people who are trained to be able to actually restructure your debt and work with your creditors to get you in another place. So don't let it spiral. Our mental health is really worth making sure we keep it top of mind. And you can get the advice and do whatever you choose. You don't have to go forward, but at least you know what you need to know to make the appropriate decision for your family.
Okay, super then. Thanks for joining us today, Jasmine.
Thanks, Mario.
Okay, that was Jasmine Mara, who is Vice President at Bromwich & Smith here in Calgary. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi at Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.